Welcome to Bob Riding's Indicator. We are this year's proud sponsor of the Herald and Review Preps. To all the players, coaches, and fans out there, we wish you a very successful season. Remember, for all your automotive needs, come see us at Bob Riding's Indicator across from Caterpillar.
Hello and welcome to this week's Preps Preview. I'm Aren down alongside the new look Justin Conn. We get a week of Preps basketball. I know it's been a kind of a crazy couple of weeks for Meridian. You know, they've had a couple big wins against Monticello and A&M. What have you seen out of Meridian this year?
You know, they're a funny team to figure because early in the year they looked bad. They looked like this was going to be a really down year for the Hawks after what's been a really great run for them. And you know, they had Dylan Smith, obviously, he's been playing well through the whole thing. I mean, he's had a great year. He's definitely, I would say, a top 3 contender right now for the Macon County Player of the Year. But they weren't getting much out of Brock Snarski, and really they couldn't really find a mix anywhere else. They weren't playing a lot of defense. I know they were really disappointed with the way they played at the holiday tournament at State Farm in Bloomington. Since then, they really bounced back well from that, and they've been especially tough at home for whatever reason. They've really that's where they've pulled both these wins over Monticello and Central A&M, and then they got a nice win against Maroa then, who'd beaten them at least, I think had beaten them twice already this season. They got a nice win against them at the OCA tournament here on Saturday. So yeah, all of a sudden they're hot. It's funny though because you look at it, they basically still only have really 3 guys that are carrying them with Smith and Snarski doing most of the scoring. Snarski ended up blowing up the other night with a 42-point game, and then Smith had that he had that I think 26-point, 22 rebound game on last week against A&M. So those 2 guys right now are playing as well as anybody in the conference. If they could get some other guys, Wade Beasley's had some decent games, and I know they've gotten production at times from Braden Barnes. But if they can get a couple other guys going other than Snarski and Smith, all of a sudden you're talking about a team that could be one of the best teams in the conference. And they obviously it's a big week, and we'll talk a little more about the OCA going forward here. But yeah, they could make some noise here down the stretch, definitely, in the OCA.
Yeah, I mean, look at Macon County tournament. It was Dylan Smith and not a whole lot of outside help. The game against Monticello where you had, Matt Cruz and Brian Phipps, you have 2 big guys. You think that, well, that kind of limits a lot of what Meridian can do. But the fact that they have gotten that outside scoring, they have a lot more options out there. And I think Snarski, he's a good player. I think it's just taken a while to get into some kind of rhythm this season. Obviously, he's hitting that high point right now. And they're getting some production from freshman Judah Renfro. I mean, they're getting those pieces put together, and they're doing it at the right time.
Smith, really nobody can keep him off the bourds. He's one of the best high school rebounders I've seen in a long time. I mean, he is just a monster on the boards.
He dives everywhere.
Yeah, he can get 20 rebounds on a given night pretty much at all times. I mean, he's always a threat to do that. And Snarski's a guy who I know in the summer a couple of years ago, and I was impressed with him, but it's never really sort of transferred to the varsity game. But finally, I thought he played well against A&M. He was sort of a quiet, Smith had that huge game, and it was kind of quiet that he had 18 and was really a key to that win. And then all of a sudden he blows up for 42 in a game. And I don't know that, I don't think you can expect him to, he's probably somewhere more like that guy that's scoring 18. I mean, if they can get that from him, that's a really nice contribution from him. So, obviously right now the OCA tournament's going on. It's down to the Final 4 on Tuesday night. Monticello and Central A&M will play, and St. Teresa will play Meridian. If Meridian is definitely capable of beating St. Teresa. One thing that's impressed me about St. Teresa though this year is you can kind of pick apart some things about their team that they don't have much outside of scoring outside of Ross Anderson and Christian Williams and this or that about them, but they are great at grinding out wins, and I think that's something that has really served them well. And Meridian's going to have to show up definitely mentally in that game, because that's one thing that St. Teresa's been so strong with is just grinding out those wins. So I kind of, if we're going to kind of start going through this and who's going to win what, I still think we'll see Monticello and St. Teresa in the final, and I think Monticello's probably, I had to say, I think they're still the most talented team, and I think they'll win this, but I could really see any of those 4. I mean, you could conceivably say, okay, any of those, you can make an argument for any of those 4 to win it.
Yeah, I don't think it's, you're going with chalk, in this tournament. Yeah. In the A&M Monticello matchup, obviously a rematch and that 9-point win by Monticello. You think A&M maybe would want to push the ball considering Monticello's size, but they run the floor pretty well for having a good sized team. I think that should be a really good rematch from a couple months ago. So see how A&M's progress, and if they can kind of do something to take away Monticello's size a little bit.
True. Switching gears a little bit, we'll talk a little bit about MacArthur. They had that great rural run, and now they've hit sort of another sort of a valley here. They did not play well, I know, against Normal West in their loss on Friday.
Yeah, they had a slow start, and they really just couldn't get up to speed. And Normal West, I mean, it's a very good team. I mean, that's probably one of the better teams in the Big 12, but they just couldn't ever catch up. And Marcus Bartley was ill. He didn't play for the last about 12 minutes or so. So you didn't have probably your best player playing for the last 12 minutes. And Reggie Anderson did a really good job commanding the team and always great on defense, but they didn't have another consistent scoring option. And there was a lot of play around the perimeter, a lot of threes that just weren't falling. And they have a game against Danville that's a very winnable game is coming up, so it kind of can get back on track. And they had won those 4 or 5 games straight in the Big 12, and hopefully they'll be able to kind of get back into that groove a little bit.
Definitely. We're going to do our top 5 again this week. I think it was funny because early in the year, I think there were times when I had trouble filling my top 5. I mean, I thought there were maybe, there weren't 5 teams I felt comfortable. I had trouble. I'm leaving some teams out this week that I wanted to get into this.
I did too, yeah.
So I'll go ahead and start with mine. And this is the one that I think that I struggled with the most. I'm going to put number 5. I'm going to go with Nokomis because they're the hottest team right now. Nobody's playing better than Nokomis. I think at all, maybe you can make the argument for my number 1 team is playing, at that level. But I mean, they're burying people right now. They started the year out, they were under 500 for a while, and this is sort of a script that we've seen Nokomis, play before, where they've been slow to start and then got really hot. But I mean, it was a bad start. It was like, okay, this is finally the year. Nokomis is going to have a bad year. But Steve Kimbrough has a great program there. I think one of the best and maybe underrated programs in the state, and they always get it going for the postseason. They're going to be a tough out, and right now they're shutting teams out or shutting teams down, and also they've got some good scorers too. So they're my number 5. The Little Illini Conference tournament really made this tough because you had Robinson, who's been I thought who was the best team for most of the season, lose to Newton, then Newton lose to Casey. So, how do you kind of manage that? So I went with number 4, Newton. They've had 4 wins against Oblong, who I think is a quality team, and then that win over Robinson kind of pushes them to my number 4 spot. Number 3, Lincoln. They had the loss to SHG on Friday, but I didn't hold that against them too bad because the Central State 8 is such a tough conference, and they bounced back with a nice one over Springfield Southeast on Saturday. Again, just an incredible year for them right now. I have them number 3. Number 2, I think I may have dropped Robinson in my last poll. It's number 2, but definitely I think I still think even with the loss to Newton, I just like that group so much, and I think you could make an argument that I'm overrating them after all this since with the losses. But they have some good wins, and I just like that mix of talent they have. And number 1, Tutopoulos is just really rolling right now, and I think I was talking to Scott Ritchie the other day about it. If you had to pick a team that had the best chance to get to state of our boys' teams, I still think it's probably. I mean, I really like Robinson's talent, but T-Town is just playing such good defense right now. They're the number 1 team, and I think they've proven that at this point.
Yeah, no, like you. I mean, I kind of made a list of teams and was trying to put people in, obviously leaving people out. I'm going to go the other route. You had Newton. I'm going to go with Casey Westfield at number 5 because that's their second win against Newton. They've been playing well recently, and I think I'm just going to go with the hotter team at this point. And it's still maybe a toss-up. They'll probably see each other again coming down the road here, but I'm just going to go with the hotter team and Casey at number 5. Monticello at 4. They had kind of that tough little stretch where they're kind of grinded by games, and they still only have 2 losses. I mean, it
was tough to leave Monticello out of mine.
Pleasant Plains is still undefeated. Yeah. That's the one team besides Meridian that's beat them. So they only have 2 losses, and they've lost to 1 undefeated team. So I think Monticello. You look at the package as a whole. Maybe they've had they still had some double-digit wins here recently, but I think you got to put them at number 4. Number 3, I have Robinson. They've just been playing solid all season. They still have 3 real consistent scorers, and you're not going to be able to take Aaron Seiler out of a game like you will, maybe some other, top players on some other team. But I think Robinson definitely number 3. 2, I have Lincoln. And, it's hard because, I haven't been able to see Lincoln, and I really would like to see Lincoln this season. But you look at, the win against Southeast, which is their second win against Southeast. I know they've beaten Chatham Glenwood. They're probably one of the top, at least top 2 teams in the Central State 8. Just a real complete package, and like I said, they lost to SHG, and you'll have games like that throughout the season. So I think still Lincoln really is, I think, a surprise of the year, and it'll be interesting to see how they do come regionals. And Teutopolis, with the schedule that's the harder schedule this year, that's independent. They're 18-3 this year, which I think is fairly impressive for an independent schedule. I mean, you got to put Teutopolis at number 1.
A lot of good stuff coming up here. I know the boys regional pairings will be coming out. I believe Friday. So that I really always feel like that kind of gives the season some shape. Kind of going into that stretch run. So, and then of course we'll have girls postseason starting next week as well. So there'll be a lot of good stuff coming up. Make sure you check us out on HR Preps, of course, on Twitter, and Pick'em contest is still going on. I think Aren's struggling. I'm still.
Let's not talk about this right now.
I'm still trailing Mike Albright, but I feel like I have a late season run in me. So check that out, and we'll see you out there.